This week on Horror News Radio, Rec 4 Apocalypse and the Scare House. This is episode 93, recorded January 12th, 2014.
Civil defense officials in Cumberland have told newsmen that murder victims showed evidence of having been partially devoured by their murderers. The Survival Command Center at the Pentagon has disclosed that a ghoul can be killed by a shot in the head or a heavy blow to the skull.
I'm your host, Dr. Rodden, and this is Horror News Radio, the official HorrorNews.net podcast. Back with us once again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-host on the net, starting off with Dave Dreyer, contributing writer, HorrorNews.net, and the Horror Channel. Dave, how you doing?
Doc, I am well. How are you, my friend?
I am doing good. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Also with us is Santos Ellen Jr., better known as the Black Saint, the lead theatrical reviewer at HorrorNews.net. Santos, how you doing?
I am here.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's it. That's all I'm doing.
No consciousness, nothing. Just existence.
Just here.
Existence.
Also with us is Thomas Mariani. He is the co-managing editor of OneOfUs.net. Thomas, how you doing?
I knew that Santos was a replicant.
A replicant. Yes.
Shh, quiet.
And the voice you hear in the background is the voice of reason, the lovely Vixen. How you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Our film for tonight is Rec 4 Apocalypse. This is the fourth in the Rec series, which is a Spanish franchise. Started off as found footage with Rec 1 and Rec 2, and moved into not found footage. Garbage. Oh no. With Rec 3 and now with Rec 4. Director Santos, help me out with the names here and pronunciation.
This one was Jaime Balaguer, no?
Sure.
See. There you go.
You say so.
And it's written by Manu Diaz. I do not have it in front of me, but do we know who the director of the other half of the team is that directed Rec 3?
Paco Plaza.
Paco Plaza. Now, have we all seen the Rec films?
Yes.
I've seen this one.
You've seen this one, Vix. But you're aware of the other ones. At least the first one.
And apparently I've seen Quarantine, so.
Which is the remake of Rec that came out in 2008.
So
yeah.
I kind of know where they're coming from.
Yeah, actually, very close to the first two films. The first films they have of each. I think I'm the only one here that actually liked Rec 3. Is that a true statement? Does anybody else like Rec 3?
I didn't like Rec 3, especially initially. Now, in retrospect, after Rec 4, it's not nearly as, it's not as awful. I think mainly it's just a thing of, if they had removed that title of, Rec 3 and just had it be Genesis, which was the subtitle, I think it would have fared a bit better. And it's still, it's a decent but kind of forgettable horror movie on its own. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have Manuela Velasco, who plays Angela. It kind of veers off to a wedding and then has the bride and groom fighting to survive and get back together.
Honestly, there's only one scene where they really reference the more religious aspects from Rec 2 that are brought up, and that's really the only tie it has to the franchise.
It mentions the apartment complex briefly. It was something about a dog, right? And then goes right into it away. Now, this movie, Rec 4, mentions Rec 3 probably far more. I was surprised by that.
It references certain elements.
Yeah. At least it acknowledges it. And one of the characters is supposedly from that film, although I don't...
Well, the only surviving character.
Yeah, I don't recall her in it, but she may very well have been. I don't know.
She was in it.
She was actually in it?
Yep.
Awesome. I don't remember her. Should I have?
Nah, I mean, it's Rec 3. There's not much to remember.
Not much to remember. I remember the bride. I thought she was awesome. All right. Well, enough about that. We're here to talk about Rec 4 Apocalypse. Thomas, jump in here with a synopsis.
Previously on Rec, or as I should say, previously on Rec, in Rec 2, we saw that the main source of this, what was identified then as a religious sort of zombie apocalypse thing, was found inside of the hero of the first film, and she had a brief part in the second film, Angela. Here in Rec 4, we follow back with what happened in the apartment complex, where she comes down from the scene in Rec 2, and she is taken by this one SWAT guy onto a boat, which will transport her back to her home over in, where were they going exactly? I'm trying to remember.
I do not recall where they were going. She just woke up and she was on the boat, on the oil tanker, and I'm not sure they were going anywhere.
Yeah, I got the feeling that they were intentionally not going anywhere. They were just out at sea for quarantine purposes.
True. They were under the premise that she would be going home, but really, as is revealed through the plot, she ends up being quarantined on this boat along with everyone else after the infection sort of starts to spread, and you have these scientists on board that are trying to make sure the infection doesn't spread to shore. There's a lot of chaos. It's Wreck on a boat. That's basically what it wants to be, but ultimately, I feel, doesn't quite achieve.
Yeah, it's Wreck on a boat. And it basically has 2 or 3 sets of characters. It has the crew from the ship. It has the scientist and the army from the ship. And then it has our heroes, which consist of Angela from 1 and 2, the old lady from the third film, from the party. They referenced the wedding party there because she's always talking about where everybody is. And then, of course, the 2 SWAT guys.
Yes.
And all these 3 storylines collide. And we have some zombie monkeys.
Yeah.
Rage monkeys. I guess they're rage monkeys.
I liked it better when it was in Brain Dead.
Oh, that's right. Damn you.
Yeah. Sumatran rat monkeys.
Yup.
Oh, man. Were the monkeys a little too CGI here?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was like a mix of CGI and what I thought looked like really crappy practical effects at certain points, where it's just like, it looks like a monkey doll. Like you could just, it's a step up from like a sock monkey.
For the close-ups, right? When the close-ups
yeah. That being said, I thought the monkeys were the only thing that were even mildly creepy in the movie.
They are more creepy than, like, admittingly, it's weird, like, they use a similar design for the zombies in this one, but it doesn't feel nearly as effective in, like, more efficient lighting. It really doesn't.
Yeah. I think they dropped the ball with handling the location. I don't think we really got the feel of how this would affect the ship. I thought the idea was interesting, but it didn't really settle.
Take advantage.
No. It's kind of a shame when Jason Takes Manhattan is a better killer on a boat movie than the Wreck franchise.
In all honesty, it felt to me like it was a contractual thing, just something to get out.
I agree. It didn't feel like there was a lot of heart in it.
Yeah, I was really.
That's not a bad way to put it. Yeah,
I just didn't dig it, man.
So I liked it. Sorry.
Oh boy.
Wait, this is interesting because Vixen doesn't have the attachment to the franchise earlier, so she can judge it more on its own.
This is true.
Vixen, what were your overall impressions in that regard as a zombie film on its own, even without like those story things that you might have been a bit lost on?
So, I mean, and that's the thing, because I don't have the backstory, and maybe that would have persuaded or dissuaded me one way or the other, but I felt like it was a good standalone movie on its own. I mean, I kind of had the idea of where they were coming from. The wedding, I just assumed, that they were picking up people from all over the place because this was the type of outbreak that had occurred in more than one place. There's a lot that you can just pull from the movie and put together. You didn't necessarily have to see the first 3 to understand it. I thought it was a good standalone movie. I liked the zombies. I like that they explained it with a parasite. I like that they were, trying to find some sort of a cure for this, that it was on a boat. I liked it. I mean, I wasn't like, oh, this is the best movie ever, but as a standalone movie, I was entertained.
Nice.
So,
I have 2 questions for you.
Sure.
One, did you like the heroine?
I did. I mean, I thought I like really strong, female characters, and I thought she was strong enough, and she wasn't the strongest. She wasn't like, 300, where we had the 2 really, really strong female leads. But, I mean, I did. I thought she played the part well.
And did you get any hint of religious connotation in the film at all?
Nope, not
Okay.
even remotely.
Right. So that speaks to what Thomas, what you were saying.
Except that one part where they actually reference it and talk about it and then explain how it actually wasn't, how it was this, parasite.
Right. And Thomas, that's part of what disappointed you. Is that right? Because of the baggage you get from the first two?
Well, yeah, because I'll say this right now. I love the first two Rec movies. I really think the first Rec is one of the standouts of the found footage horror genre of recent years. And I think Rec 2 manages to be the aliens to that movie's Alien in terms of developing this, like we said, spoilers if you haven't seen those other two movies, which if you haven't, do so, because they're great. There's a religious zombie connotation there that was so unique and interesting that was established in Rec 2 that I was so fascinating, because that really isn't something we get a lot of these days, of like this religious zombie context. And I was really engaged to see how this would continue, especially with the end of Rec 2, which is so ominous and disturbing. I was really interested to see what they would do, especially since all these movies have a low budget. But ultimately, even with the low budget, I felt like this was a very paint-by-the-numbers and uninteresting zombie film. Even like, the biggest problem of this movie, really, to me, besides the stuff that carries over, like, on its own, is the editing. The editing is garbage, especially during any of the zombie scenes. It's so bad, so disconcerting, and it's just like, this feels like it was edited by, like, a major Hollywood studio action movie, like an Expendables movie. Like, it's that bad in terms of the editing.
Yeah, I like the way you reference a Hollywood film to tell us how badly it's edited. That's awesome. Dave, you haven't said anything yet. Step in here and give us your thoughts. What do you bring to this fourth film as far as the first three? And what did you think? And what do you think of Rec Maggots?
Well, I was totally confused by Rec 3. We discussed this at some other point, and I thought Rec 3 was just a mess. I thought it was interesting they chose to, with the exception of just a couple mentions, they basically ignored it and, just kind of picked up where Rec 2 left off. And so I thought that was a good thing. I didn't love this movie, but it was an enjoyable watch for me. It didn't bother me. It missed on a lot of its attempts of what it was trying to do, but it still held my attention through the whole thing. I kept waiting for the big, motor scene. You knew it was coming because it was all over the poster, using the little outboard motor as a weapon. And so I was waiting for that, and I was not disappointed in where that went. Enjoyed that quite a bit. But yeah, overall, I don't know. It just fell kind of flat. For me.
Did you like the maggot? I want to call it a maggot.
Yeah.
It's a worm, I guess. I don't know what it is, but
yeah,
parasite.
I was kind of surprised they went there because you make he was making reference. Thomas was making reference to Jason Takes Manhattan, and that reminded me. I forget which Friday the 13th movie was it, but which one was it where Jason was a mouth parasite they were passing back and forth.
I believe that was Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah, and that's the first thing I thought. I'm like, hey, it's the Jason maggot, and so that was kind of strange, but I kind of like that better than the whole biblical religious reference that they had been going for in the other two films. I kind of like this a little bit better. I don't know. It was more enjoyable for me.
Interesting.
To know that that's what it was.
Interesting. Santos, you wrote the review for horrornews.net. But
that's the rumor.
Yeah, it's the rumor. How favorable was that review?
It was not very favorable.
How unfavorable was it?
I gave it a 1 out of 5.
Why a 1?
Because it's a dumb movie. It's like I said. Thomas said it. Rec 1 and Rec 2 are like near brilliant. Actually, Thomas's analogy was better. He said Rec 2 was like the aliens to Rec 1. I always called Rec 2 the Godfather Part 2 of horror movies. I thought it was like a sequel that's just better than the original. And I love the way Part 2 ended. I mean, Part 2 literally is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. It really is. I was terrified watching Rec 2. And I loved where they went. I mean, because they took the story into a whole new territory, something completely different. while keeping it in the building. You know, it was just, I was horrified in a good way by Rec 2. That's why I hated Rec 3 so much, because they decided they wanted to tweak the story, you know, change it. You know, it was a bad idea. But I thought they'd come back to where they left off in Rec 2 with Rec 4. I thought, considering that they say this is it, this is the last one, the time has come. That's what the poster says. The time has come. Time has come to end this fucking franchise. That's what it is.
I don't think it's going to be the last one. I think the ending made it clear it's not going to be the last one.
That, you know, if, you know, not for nothing, but that was one of the most wretched endings ever. And if they dare to make a Rec 5 based on that fucking ending, I will fly to Spain or to
Someone's
Mexico.
going to sit down for a seafood dinner.
Oh my God.
That's it.
I will
Zombie rabies all over again.
Oh man, I will go to jail. I will go to prison because that's not happening on my watch. You know, I was just disappointed. It's just not, you know, it's not that, you know, it just feels very by the numbers. It does nothing especially well. It seems to exist, like I said, to satisfy a contractual obligation. They went through the motions, they made a movie, and then that's it. Now we can do what we want to do. We had to make Rec 4 because of this contract. Now we can do what we want to do, and maybe the next, whatever they do next will be a good movie. But it just sat there. It completely ignored all the ideas that Rec 2 had, and I don't understand why they even bother. If they're not gonna, you know, flesh out what happened at the end of Rec 2, why bother? Why? It's a poor 28 days later. 28 days later on a boat. That's what it felt like.
So did the change in location help at all, or did it hinder?
It hindered because they didn't use it. They could have had something pretty cool there on that freighter. You know, there's a lot of dark corners in that freighter. You know, a lot of stuff to explore. And the idea that they're surrounded by water, you know, and there's no easy way out is kind of cool. Because if you remember, they said that they jimmied the lifeboats so that nobody could use them.
Yeah, they disabled them.
Right. So, you know, that's a cool idea. And then they just do nothing with it.
Yeah, conveniently, somebody had a lifeboat.
Yeah, somebody had a rubber boat.
Yeah, a backpack lifeboat.
Yeah, get out of here. Come on, you know, it's like they wasted the entire the idea of having it take place on a freighter was wasted because they didn't use the freighter. They didn't use the freighter at all. What did they do with the freighter, Doc? They blew it up.
Yeah. Well, and not for nothing, but what are you going to do on your little inflatable boat with a motor and nothing else in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah, well, you know.
That was not a well thought out escape right there.
Well, it's better than being blown up, I suppose.
It should have been blown up because they weren't that far away from the freighter.
That's why I'm like, you're not far away enough. And yet they're like, oh, let's just stick our heads down. We'll be just fine.
Yeah.
Because apparently when ships blow up, they just blow up straight upwards.
Yeah. And that thing blew up. I mean, it blew the fuck up. So, like, you know.
Oh, come on. Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson made it out of, what was that, Die Hard 3 or whatever the fuck was that? They were just jumping off the boat and they survived.
Yeah, but that's Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson.
If we're going to get into Die Hard like issues with consistency, we can go to 4 and 5 for far more egregious examples.
That's Bruce.
I'm just saying.
Bruce
We're
Willis.
not talking about Die Hard 4 or 5.
Oh man!
Bruce Willis doesn't die. It's in his contract. He does.
Exactly.
He also doesn't act anymore, but that's regardless of the point.
That's in his contract too. That's in his contract.
You know, I'm curious, Doc. You haven't gotten many of your points out on Rec 4. What did you think of it?
Oh, what did I think of Rec 4? I thought I tried to start off with that I thought that they totally missed the ball with the location. They didn't take advantage of it at all, like Santos was saying. I thought that it lacked the intensity of the first two films, and it became more of an action film. I mean, it was just an action film. The horror didn't seep into the script here somehow. And you guys are talking about Die Hard, and it felt very Die Hard. She was basically John McClane trying to get out of the boat. So. But
not for nothing, she didn't do much either besides scream and run. The poster has her holding the motor.
Yeah, and she never really
like she was going to do something with it. She don't do nothing. She screams and runs for 90 minutes. Get
I
out
thought
of
when
here.
they opened the vents, they opened the vents with the monkeys?
She's holding it up with the other guy, and she screams, "Monkeys!" That's it. That's all she does. She's not even holding it by herself. She's holding it with the other guy, with the guy
Like
that has
Captain
the breath on him.
Obvious.
She's like, "Monkeys!" And then they get drenched with monkey fingers for 3 minutes. I'm like, I just think that's like sort of false advertising because she looks pretty badass on the poster.
Not to mention, it's a real downgrade from the character that we got from those earlier. Like in the first Rec, what really like held it together was her performance. She is so like engaging and very down to earth and realistic in a way that like I could like attach myself to with that character because she's just a TV reporter and she's stuck in the middle of this enclosed environment that she can't get out of and she's terrified in a way that's totally believable but is able to like keep her head cool enough to where she wasn't like just some stereotypical horror bimbo that runs around and just screams. Here they really degrade her into that kind of a character and I really, really dislike that.
Yeah, other than being the same actress, it did not feel like the same character. Even though they blatantly mentioned that she's who she is with that Nick character that has the crush on her, which was kind of funny, I suppose.
He was one of the better parts of the movie to me. I'll agree. In terms of like, I could at least see like, there's at least like a simple subversion of the idea that like, it ties into one of the other characters, one of the SWAT team characters in terms of like who survives and who's necessarily nice, as it were, by the end of the movie. Right. I really like that turn and how it actually helped with that Nick character and how the two of them, continue to go on. But, aside from that, really, there's nothing here, especially from frickin' like Spanish Jerry Orbach, our villain, who isn't
who Dr. Ricarte, Hector Colome. Speaking of these, because I thought that Nick was basically the Kevin Smith character for the film.
No, don't insult him like that.
Oh, okay. But speaking of that, Guzman, Paco Manzanito, to me looked like a very Spanish Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I didn't get that.
I didn't get that.
No, just me. All right, Dave, weigh in
You
on.
and sort of Thomas.
I can see where you would say that, and I was surprised for whatever reason this time. The lead chick, she really reminded me of Marissa Tomei. I didn't notice it in the other two movies, but I kept looking at her and I'm like, my God, she looks just like Marissa Tomei. I mean, I don't know why, but she did. This time it was really noticeable.
I thought she looked like a bunny rabbit.
A bunny rabbit being chased by monkeys. I don't know where you're going with that.
I don't know. Maybe I picked up on something that just wasn't there, but I thought the whole reason they brought him to the boat was because they thought they had a cure. The monkeys were the genesis for the cure. Isn't that kind of what the whole idea was?
Right, but then what they figured out is that it mutates with each person's DNA. So what would be right? So I mean, I think that was the intent. But that's also why they disabled everything, because if things went wrong, the understanding was that they would just blow everything up because they couldn't risk having a contaminant or whatever this contagion is getting back out. And then they figured out that it was just like, a giant tequila worm that people were passing around back and forth.
How pitiful was that? That was really pitiful. That was just pitiful. It was so throwaway, especially that ending, that final. I was disgusted by that.
Which part of the ending are you talking about? Underwater or
the underwater?
Okay, that was.
Finally, that was.
And why not a shark?
Why do it at all?
It was just lazy.
If you're going to do it, why not a shark?
I felt
lazy. That's the word. Lazy.
Yeah,
that's
exactly it was lazy. They were like, we might need to make a Rec 5, so let's just have an in. And they're like,
it just gave them an out. It reminded me of like an ending of a Tremors movie. No, they just had to leave an out. So some way they could bring it back if they had to.
And that's honestly part of my problem with it being like, instead of this religious idea being like just this worm, because like that's fucking dumb. That's boring. Just like, oh, it's a worm. Who cares? Like, this religious context that it had before, like, it was literal heaven and hell type connotations. That's huge. That's grand scale. And I guess it was a thing of, like, they couldn't get the budget to do that, I guess. But honestly, I think you could have made a decent apocalyptic Rec movie if you had just not done Rec 3 and 4 and just made one giant movie.
Yep.
Yeah, way more interesting way, like, and actually take on these bigger elements, because instead it's just a worm. Like, you mentioned Jason Goes to Hell. It's about as disappointing as that plot reveal in Jason Goes to Hell.
Well, wasn't the worm in the second film briefly, or did they? It
was, but it was more of a vessel for this religious context.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fucking, it's the least apocalyptic film with the word apocalypse in the title ever. It's like this.
Very true.
No fucking apocalypse. What apocalypse? You know, when you hear apocalypse in the title, you're expecting some semblance of apocalypse.
You can't have an apocalypse on a boat with 10 people.
Yeah, exactly.
An apocalypse is not 10 people. That's barely an outbreak.
You should have been here on Thanksgiving. Should have been here on Thanksgiving.
It's not even a pandemic.
Fucking apocalypse. People fighting in this house of that turkey. That was apocalyptic up in here. That movie was nothing. You know what? I'm not talking about this movie anymore.
That's it. Shut down.
I've shut down.
Santos is done.
I'm disgusted by this movie. And it was made by Spanish people, which disgusts me even more.
Oh, okay.
I'm disgusted by you Spanish filmmakers right now.
Oh, man.
The thoughts of Horror News Radio contributor Sam Jr. not reflect.
They're mine.
Does not reflect any of
They're mine. They're all mine.
I, for one, respect the Spanish film industry.
well, Black Saint, step in here and talk about the director. I mean, have you written the director off as well? Do you think you would you still entertain seeing anything from
Listen, man, he's responsible. He's responsible for Wreck and Wreck 2. I mean, the man is not without skill. You know, it's not like he can't make a movie. He can. He made another movie that was sort of okay, called what the hell was the name of that dang movie? Sleep Tight. Sleep Tight. Sleep Tight. Sleep Tight was okay. It had its moments. And he did a movie called The Nameless back in the 90s with that was sort of okay too. A good little ghost story. So he's got talent. He's not that he's not talented. Listen, I'm talking a lot of shit. I can't make a movie. You know what I mean? He's more talented than I am. I could barely make a bowl of cereal, let alone make a movie. So I'm not gonna knock the man. I'm just saying that Rec 4 is just really pitiful. It's just a pitiful way to end what started out as like one of the strongest horror franchises ever. Not just Spanish. I'm just a horror franchise. I mean, this was serious shit. And they really just, it was like a dog that got hit by like a horse that breaks its leg and it's no good. And you put it out of its misery. That's what Rec 4 feels like. Let's just put this out of its misery. Let's just end it and move on. And that to me is really, really, really disappointing considering how you started. That just hurts me. It really does. It hurts me.
It's notable the fact that this is, that Rec 2 was the last one that, Guaro, apologies for mispronunciations, and Plaza, co-directed. And I think Rec 3 and 4 really show that, like, their strengths on their own aren't nearly what their strengths are together as a unit. I would love to see the two of them collaborate again.
That's
but I don't know about by themselves. I think their output has not engaged me.
Well, Vixen, I want you to step in here, and what would your argument be to persuade the Black Saint to like this film? What is there one thing that you would say? Hey, take another look at this.
Well, considering that he has always been the yin to my yang, and it's rare that we ever see eye to eye on a film, I would just say try looking at it, which is impossible to do, but maybe why I at least enjoyed it, without the history of the other 3 Rec films. Because I agree, I think when something starts off so strong, and then as the subsequent films are made, they pale in comparison, it takes away from it. Whereas all I have is this one film as a standalone, and so maybe that's why I can see more merit in it than anybody else does. Because I agree, it's when you're looking at something that starts off so strong, it's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan. He started off with this really strong movie, and then everything after that, you're just like, because it pales in comparison. So I don't know, unless you can suspend the prior movies that you liked. That's probably the only reason.
So you're saying dump the baggage.
Dump the baggage.
Dump the baggage.
Do it.
Thomas.
Do it.
Thomas. I want you to answer this question because you know I love me some found footage. Rec 1, Rec 2 are, like you said yourself, are some of the best found footage films out there. Did this film suffer for not being found footage?
I'm not sure if it did, because I think regardless, if you filmed this script in found footage, I would still be disappointed by like the film overall in terms of its story and its characters, mainly because just it's not really like it still wouldn't be a satisfying like conclusion to that franchise. But regardless of that, even if I remove the baggage, as it were, I would still say that as a traditional horror film, it's really just like poorly done in a lot of ways. I mentioned the editing, which is god awful, but there's so much other stuff with like how certain characters are introduced. It feels a bit cliche, and like even like all these elements overall feel increasingly more cliche. Like there's this whole scene where our main villain is talking to one of his subordinate scientists who has been bitten. And it's just the begging for life scene that we've seen in every horror movie. It's like, you've been bit. No, we have the cure now. You know, it's like, you need me. Not anymore. It's like, I don't care. Like, this is dumb. I don't, like, you know what's way more interesting than a bunch of scientists? Huge religious connotations that could be the end of the world. That's way more cool.
I could see what you're saying. I think that for me, it's a lot like what you're saying is the way I feel about Resident Evil. I feel like the first one was awesome, the second one was great, and then after that, it just got progressively worse.
Isn't there a Resident Evil Apocalypse as well?
Yes, there is. There's Extinction, there's Apocalypse.
Was it also on a boat?
There is one, yes.
Actually, one takes place on a boat.
There is one that takes place on a boat, yeah.
That's where they all end up, is on this big, like I forget like an aircraft carrier. I think that's Extinction or Apocalypse or one of them. Anyway, there's like 8 of them now. But, yeah, it's that same premise. It's like, what do? We've done everything else. Stick them on a boat. Stick them on a boat.
Put them on a
boat. I think the more apt thing to continue that Aliens analogy, I think, is more the fact that, like, you have these first 2 great movies, and then, much like Alien, I would say, you have 2 really disappointing and not too good entries in the franchise that really degrade the quality, especially when in terms of like the alien ending possibility. So much wonder. Where will these people go? Where will they encounter these aliens in other places? And Alien 3 happens much in that same way to me. Though I like Alien Resurrection more than Alien 3.
And Alien versus Predator. My favorite. I love that movie. I love some Alien versus Predator.
It is high cheese. Dave, I want you to step in here because you are a resident special effects guru. You love the gore, you love the special effects, you love the monsters. How does this film rate with its gore factor?
I was actually kind of surprised how gory it was. I wasn't expecting that much. Santos mentioned that monkey scene, and as ridiculous as it was, they rip up some fucking monkeys.
They do.
Those things are just coming fast and furious, and they put them through a Cuisinart. I had fun with it. I hate to say that I liked it because that might actually make someone go see it.
Okay.
I don't know that it's something you should pay a lot of money to see because it's not a good movie. But I did enjoy it. It held my attention through the whole thing, and a big part of that was the blood factor, the cheese. I enjoyed it. And I really, like I said, Rec 3 completely lost me. So for me, this was a huge step forward back into the territory they had before. I to this day, I still don't know what Rec 3 was doing or why it even exists. So I think maybe that's why I like this one, not as much as Nixon, but a little bit more than the rest.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. Santos, is there anything you want to add other than your rating of 1?
I'm going back to my original statement. I'm not talking about this movie anymore.
Fair enough. Vixen, what is your grade on this, 1 through 5? And what is your favorite scene?
I give it like a 2.
A 2?
A 2. I mean, again, it wasn't like some amazing film.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
What?
Wait a second. Hold the phone. Did you say 2? You just gushed over it for the last 10 minutes.
No,
and you're giving it a 2?
I believe that I initially said, while I wasn't like, wow, this is an amazing film, I thought it was entertaining and deserved it of a 2. I would maybe even a 2.25.
I love her. I love Vixen so much.
You guys are arguing between a 1 and a 2. That's awesome. All right, Dave, what is your score? And do you have a favorite?
Well, Vixen's just blew me out of the water here because I said I think I liked it. I didn't like it quite as much as Vixen. I was going to give it a 2.5, and then she shows up with a 2.
I know. What's up with that?
But I'm going to stick with my. I want to stick with my 2.5. Like I said, I did enjoy watching it. So I'm going with a 2.5. I think Vixen should be a 3.
I'm fine.
You're going to
Sounded like
a
a decent
3.
3.
I'll bump it up to a 3.
Thomas.
There we go. So I'm at a 2.5.
Homeostasis.
Oh, dear God. Thomas, step in here with your score. What is your recommendation on this film?
Much like Dead by Rec 3, I wasn't sure what it was trying to do. It had this weird mix of like horror comedy and then being like a straight up like horror movie, and it didn't quite know where to quite achieve that balance. But you know what? I'm going to say this. Rec 3 had at least the gumption and balls to do something as weird as a main character's mother being shot by a dude in a SpongeBob outfit. Like, that, you know what? That may not made as much sense or been that, in keeping with the franchise tonally, but at least that's like a risk that they took. With Rec 4, there are no real risks taken. There's no really interesting avenues that they explore with this world they've created. It feels much like Santos said, it feels like a contractual obligation that was just rushed out and doesn't really have the heart or the intelligence or any of the engaging elements of those first 2 movies. So I will give it a 1.5 out of 5. And thusly state that it is another disappointing final entry in the franchise.
Final entry. I like the way you put that.
Better be fucking final.
Well, I think this thing is like a godsend to cinema. No, not at all. Actually, I actually kind of split down the middle. I was going to give it a 2.5 as well. For an action flick with some, mediocre gore, it kind of was there. It kept my attention. But I think it drops the ball on some key factors. One, it doesn't bring the horror at all, the scares. When you compare it to the Wreck, it doesn't have the intensity of that first one. When they're being chased through these hallways or in the room, when they're locked in a room with these rage zombies, it is scary. I don't think any of the the rage zombies running around this boat were frightening. It didn't feel like they were ever as cornered. Even though, structurally in the script, they were meant to be, right? But it didn't feel that way. It certainly never felt that way. And I don't think I ever felt attached to any of the characters, even the one, Angela, that we have been following. Because I didn't feel like it was still the same character. So I'm having a hard time even backing up my 2.5. Sounds like I'm going to give it a 1.5. But as an action flick, just to zip around a boat and have some fun and blow it up, that's what it did.
Did you have the same issue I had with the editing, Doc?
I didn't, but the weird thing I found, and maybe this is what you're talking about, it's like the establishing shot of the boat, of the oil tanker, was oddly cut into the film. So maybe we are saying the same thing, because they spend 5, maybe 10 minutes on the boat and you get a great feel for the this room, that room, and then suddenly they cut away and you have the big swelling music and the establishing shot of the boat, zipping through the ocean. And I said, that was weird. Why didn't they do that earlier?
I was thinking more of the fight scenes specifically. Like any hand-to-hand combat just felt like so jarring in a way that doesn't even work for like the frenzied nature of the fights. I get where like that might be the reason why they did some of those editing choices, but it felt just more so choppy in a way that just like I can't even understand which character's which.
There wasn't a whole lot of it, although I did like the whole thing with the cook.
That I did like.
I thought they did that well, and because he was close up and the guys were behind him, and you know he was twitching, and then he opened his eyes, and you saw what was happening, and that was the establishing shot that you know is transferring from the monkeys back to the humans, and it was important. And then of course they had that crazy ass knife that he used, and it never came back other than he picked it up, but never used it. I was a little disappointed by that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the false Chekhov's gun, as it were.
Is that what it, yeah. So I mean, there were parts that I thought worked, that scene, and the following scenes with him worked. I guess you're talking about what I think I was referring to with when the extras, for lack of a better way, it's basically the army men, are running around the boat all infected. You never felt the intensity. They never felt the proximity wasn't really tight enough. And maybe that's what you're referring to?
No, more just like any scene where they're like fighting just looked terrible.
Did they fight? Maybe I didn't realize they actually
no, any of the scenes where it's like the zombies trying to attack the humans, it's like, especially there's one that's just like in the cramped hallway, and on top of that they have the monkey in there, and it's just like, this is horribly mangled garbage. It feels like it was edited with the motor that was used in the film.
Nice. So it doesn't sound like we're terribly much behind this film at all, is it?
Nope.
All right. Well.